friends and you go buy a company. Hopefully put in your management team, turn them around and resell it or do something with it. So before joining VSI, I helped raise 110 million euro and 55 million US dollars overseas and did a private placement for a privately held company in Seattle. And so also spent a little bit of time working in the government and in the NGO role. I worked for the World Trade Center and also for the U.S. Department of Commerce. So you can see multinational, nonprofit, and government side. Went to grad school at a school called Thunderbird, which is in Arizona. It's very small. Specializes in international management. I'm very glad to be here.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll go back to Mr. Mark Hicks. If you could just talk a little bit about your path to management, or your role, or getting to be a president of a company, of your own company. Maybe the time frame of from when you received your degree to kind of the path it took to get to that point.
Sure. When I went to school at Loma Linda, I worked in a hospital. And so I was a respiratory therapist in a hospital. I worked in there for about, not specifically Loma Linda, I worked in other hospitals too, but for about 5 years I worked in respiratory therapy. And then I made my move to Baxter Troutnell, which was more of a corporate position. And I was a salesman for about 6 months, and then I moved over to the home respiratory side. Once I moved there, I was a respiratory therapist in the home respiratory therapy side. Then I became the respiratory supervisor. Then I became a manager of a district office. After I was there for a couple of years, I went to a company called Life Care, which sold portable ventilators. And from there, I was started as a sales manager for them, and then was a district manager, and then was a regional vice president for that company. I was there for 12 years, and they sold the company to a larger group. And in that process, that's when I decided, I think, for me, I would like to start my own business. I didn't know what that looked like, I didn't know what that would be, but I knew at that point, rather than continue on in a corporate environment, I would like to strike out and try to start my own business. And that's when I started Nap Time Home Care, which is what we started as, because what we did were a lot of products for children while they slept. We did apnea monitors, we did pH probes, a lot of things because when they slept, and it made sense. Since then, we branched out and do a lot of different supplies for a lot of different age groups, and we are NHC medical supplies. So if you've heard those two terms today, that's the new swing too. Once I started that company, I did every entrepreneur's little prayer, which is okay, God, don't just let me make enough money to make a living so I don't have to go ask for my job back. and then you go a little bit more and you say, okay, this is pretty cool, but you think maybe I could get a better car, and you kind of go through that process of gaining more confidence and more success. I started out in just a small little industrial complex which had 2 rooms. And we had our equipment in one room and we had an office in one room. And all my building was done outside of the company. And then as we grew, we brought everything in to a point now where we have pretty close to 30 employees, 3 locations, all of our buildings done internally. And the growth was pretty constant and pretty consistent over the years. We acquired a couple of smaller companies, but most of our growth was internal, and we were just able to go get a contract or open up a new store in another city or something like that. So in our industry, there's a huge balance between the kind of money that you take in, whether it's insurance or Medi-Cal, which is the state, which is one, or Medicare, which is the federal government, which is now contracting all of our supplies. So if you don't get a contract, you can't provide balance everything between cash, which is the store, and insurance, private insurance, and state-funded and federal-funded. Okay, so it's very difficult to grow your company or organization when maybe you don't get paid for 3 months from the state. It's a real juggling act to try to grow a business like that. But at the end of the day, we've been pretty successful with that. So I don't know if I've said that, but I've probably been, I've had this business for pretty close to 15 years now. So that's been my progress. And when I went to sort of downtown home care, I was the president of that all by myself, and today I'm the president of that, so with 30 people. So that was kind of my experience in those things.
Okay, so I think the key word in this question is really entails, and I think from the beginning of my career, I tried to surround myself, and this is what I suggest: surround yourself with good people. While working for BP, I the first few months there, I kind of just got a lay of the land and took a look at the organization. But I surrounded myself, went to lunch with people who I felt were successful in that organization. We went to lunch. I just started networking. But really, I surrounded myself with people who I wanted to model myself after. Okay, because I was young. I just came out of school, all of 24 years old, and I'm working with folks who've been in this industry for 24 years. So I did that, and that was at the beginning of my career. But kind of just making my way up from BP. While at BP, in a 5-year span, I got 3 different promotions. So kind of moved up every year and a half. When I went to QTC, I was very fortunate that we hired a CFO, and we didn't have a CFO when I was hired. And he was a phenomenal CFO who, when he gave me an opportunity, I learned from it, and I looked at extra work because we were short-staffed. But the one thing you got to remember is when you get new assignments or more work to do outside the box of what you're doing in your cubicle, look at those things as opportunities, and that's what I did. And I really tried to prove myself to him, like that. I'm here, willing to learn, and willing to do the work, and take whatever project we're working on, take it to the finish line and complete the mission, as we always called it. So that's in terms of kind of how I modeled my work ethic, what I wanted to do. That's what I did. I had a plan, and my plan was to really absorb a lot from folks who've been in this industry for over 20 years, who've kind of moved up, worked for Big Four, went to private, worked some public. But I kind of grasped a little bit of the best of what they had, and I took it with me. And even while I was a student here at University of Bern, that's what I did with all my professors. I took the best of what they had, their qualities, and I took those feathers and put it in my cap, because I think those things carried me through my career. And sometimes, I guess what they talk about here is leadership a lot. And I had Dr. Richard Simpson, and one of the things that he told me was he can count on one hand how many true leaders that he's met in his entire career, which spans over 30 years. And if you can find that one leader in the organization, definitely do your best to spend some time with him. If it's your manager, that's wonderful. If it's not, then try to find some, ask somebody to be my mentor. Look, I just started this company, I'd like to go to lunch, I want to be successful. I'm sure they'll help you in that, but you definitely want to find the true leaders of the organization and just immerse yourself with them. And that's made me successful. I've never forgot, important things that people have told me. I forget a lot of things, but I don't forget those. So, but that has been my, in terms of entailing, I've been very fortunate, but I made the best out of those opportunities, and that's what you have to do. You have to find those opportunities. It may look like a roadblock, but it may be an opportunity in disguise, and that's what you have to determine. So that's kind of been my journey, as you might say, landing me where I'm at now.
Thank you.